August can be one of the toughest months your garden faces all year. The heat intensifies, plants become stressed, water disappears from the soil faster than you can replace it, and small problems that seem harmless right now can quietly turn into fewer blooms and struggling plants later on. Here is the good news. August has not arrived yet, and that means you still have time to prepare. In this video, I am going to walk you through 7 things you should do before August arrives, so your garden enters the month stronger, healthier, and ready for whatever the heat brings. If you wait until you see the damage, you will already be playing catch-up. Let us get ahead of it instead. If you are new here, welcome. This channel is all about helping you create a beautiful, thriving garden with practical plant care tips, smart gardening ideas, and simple techniques anyone can follow, no matter your experience level. If you love the idea of growing a garden you can be proud of, consider subscribing, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell, because there is plenty more gardening inspiration coming your way. Before we get into today's preparations, I want to ask you something. What is the one thing you are most worried about in your garden as August approaches? Maybe it is your hydrangeas wilting in the afternoon sun. Maybe it is your containers drying out by lunchtime. Or maybe it is weeds taking over a bed you have not gotten to yet. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments. I read every one, and it helps me know exactly what to cover in future videos. Keep in mind that gardening advice always depends on your climate, your USDA hardiness zone, your soil, and the specific plants you are growing. A tip that works beautifully in a cooler, humid region might need adjusting if you garden somewhere hot and dry, and that is completely normal. Use these 7 tasks as a framework, then adjust the details to fit your own backyard. Now, as we approach August, your garden is standing at a turning point. The plants that get the right preparation now will keep blooming through the heat. The plants that do not will start to fade, and once they fade, it is much harder to bring them back. So let us make sure your garden is in the first group. I have talked with a lot of gardeners over the years, and one theme comes up again and again. Most people do not lose their garden to one big disaster. They lose it slowly, to a string of small things that were each easy to fix on their own, but that piled up because nobody addressed them in advance. A little watering neglect here, a little weed pressure there, a plant that never got deadheaded, and suddenly late summer arrives, and the whole garden looks worn out. The 7 preparations in this video are designed to interrupt that pattern before it starts. Task 7. Start preparing your fall garden before August arrives. I know this sounds early. We have not even reached August yet, and I am already talking about fall. But here is the truth that most gardeners learn the hard way. The gardeners with the most beautiful gardens in September and October are the ones who started planning in July. Before August arrives, take a slow walk through your garden and think about what you want it to look like once summer starts winding down. Are there gaps where a spring bulb has finished its show and left bare soil behind? Are there perennials that would benefit from being divided before the ground gets too hard and dry to work with? This is the moment to make that plan, while the soil is still workable and you are not fighting extreme heat to get the job done. If you are hoping to add fall-blooming perennials, such as sedum or certain asters, look into getting them into the ground before the peak heat of August makes transplanting stressful for both you and the plant. Many gardeners wait until fall officially begins to think about their fall garden, and by then, the best planting window has already closed. A simple, beginner-friendly tip is to keep a small notebook or a note on your phone specifically for fall garden ideas. Every time you notice a bare patch or think of a plant combination you would like to try, write it down now, while the idea is fresh and August has not yet arrived to distract you with maintenance demands. Preparing your fall garden before August is not about doing a lot of extra work right now. It is about making a few smart decisions early so that later in the season, your garden continues to look intentional and cared for instead of tired and forgotten. Think about it this way. The gap between a garden that looks tired by September and a garden that still looks intentional often comes down to 2 or 3 decisions made in July. Maybe that is choosing where a new clump of sedum will go once the daylilies finish their show, or maybe it is simply deciding now that you will not let a bare patch sit empty and weedy for the rest of the season. Small decisions made before August arrives tend to compound into a much more polished-looking garden later. Task 6. Prepare your plants for continued blooms into late summer. Most gardeners wait until they see the damage, but by then it is already harder to fix. This is especially true when it comes to keeping flowers blooming through late summer. If you want your coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, daylilies, and garden phlox to keep producing new flowers after August heat sets in, the groundwork needs to happen now. For many perennials, this means considering whether a plant needs dividing before the heat arrives. Overcrowded clumps of daylilies or bee balm often produce fewer blooms simply because they are competing with themselves for water, nutrients, and space. Dividing in the cooler days before August gives the divisions time to settle in without facing extreme stress right away. For plants like salvia and garden phlox, encouraging a second flush of blooms often comes down to a light trim of spent flower spikes before August stress sets in. This redirects the plant's energy toward producing new buds instead of going to seed, which means more color for you later in the season. With ornamental grasses, this is a good moment to check whether they need support, such as staking or gentle grouping with twine, so that summer storms and heavy winds do not flatten them right when they are at their most beautiful. As we approach August, think of this step as setting the stage. You are not forcing more blooms overnight. You are giving your plants the room, the energy, and the structure they need, so that when August heat and stress arrive, they are already positioned to keep performing instead of shutting down. Task 5. Control weeds before they compete with your plants. Here is something many beginner gardeners do not realize. Weeds do not just look messy. During periods of heat and limited rainfall, every weed in your garden bed is directly competing with your flowers and vegetables for the same limited water and nutrients. This is something you want to do before August arrives, because once the heat sets in, that competition becomes far more costly for your desired plants. Before August, walk your beds and remove weeds while their root systems are still small and the soil is easier to work with. Pulling a weed now, while it has a shallow root, takes seconds. Pulling that same weed in the middle of an August dry spell, once it has developed a deep taproot, can disturb the roots of the plants you actually want to keep. A common mistake is focusing only on the weeds you can see above the soil line. Take a moment to also apply a layer of mulch after weeding, which will suppress new weed seeds from germinating in the first place. This single habit, done before the heat intensifies, can save you hours of frustrating maintenance in August. For container gardeners, do not overlook your pots. Weeds in containers compete for an even smaller volume of soil and moisture, so a quick check now prevents a bigger problem when your container plants are already working hard just to stay hydrated. Controlling weeds before August is one of those preparation steps that feels small in the moment, but pays off enormously later. Your plants will have full access to the water and nutrients in the soil, right when they need it most. Task 4. Improve soil health before plants become stressed. Healthy soil is the foundation everything else depends on, and this is something you want to strengthen before August arrives, rather than after your plants are already struggling. Soil that holds moisture well and supports strong root growth gives your garden a real buffer against heat stress. Before the peak of summer heat, consider working a layer of compost into your beds. Compost improves the soil's structure, helps it retain moisture more evenly, and feeds the beneficial microbes that support strong root systems. Strong roots are what allow a plant like a hydrangea or a rose to keep pulling up water even when the top layer of soil has dried out. Mulching plays a major role here as well, and it deserves mentioning again because it does double duty. A 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch around your plants, applied before August heat intensifies, helps the soil retain moisture, moderates soil temperature, and slows evaporation. Without it, the top few inches of soil can dry out and heat up dramatically on a hot afternoon, putting direct stress on shallow roots. For container gardeners, soil health matters even more, because there is a limited volume of soil to work with. Before August, check whether your container soil has become compacted or depleted, and consider refreshing the top few inches with fresh potting mix and compost. Improving your soil now, before plants become stressed, means that by the time August heat peaks, your plants are drawing from a reserve of moisture and nutrients, rather than fighting against depleted, compacted, sun-baked ground. Task 3. Protect vulnerable plants before extreme weather arrives. Not every plant in your garden handles heat the same way, and this is something worth mapping out before August arrives rather than during a heat wave. Hostas, for example, can scorch badly in direct afternoon sun once temperatures climb, while many hydrangea varieties will droop dramatically during the hottest part of the day, even when the soil still has adequate moisture. Before extreme heat sets in, look at your garden layout and identify which plants are most vulnerable to sun scorch and afternoon stress. For plants in particularly exposed spots, consider whether a taller companion plant, a shade cloth, or even a strategically placed patio umbrella could offer some relief during the most intense afternoon hours. Container gardeners have an advantage here that in-ground gardeners do not, and that advantage is mobility. Before August heat peaks, plan out which containers might benefit from being moved to a spot with afternoon shade. Terracotta pots in particular heat up quickly in direct sun, which can stress roots even if the top of the plant looks fine. This is also the moment to think about wind and storm exposure. Late summer often brings sudden, intense storms, and tall plants like ornamental grasses or top-heavy roses can benefit from staking now, before a storm arrives and catches you unprepared. Lavender, on the other hand, is a good reminder that not every plant needs protection from the sun. Lavender thrives in hot, dry conditions and can actually suffer more from too much shade or overly moist soil than from summer heat. Part of preparing your garden before August is knowing which plants need shielding and which ones are perfectly happy soaking up the sun, so that you are not accidentally working against a plant's natural preferences. The next step could be the difference between struggling plants and a thriving garden, and protecting your most vulnerable plants before the weather turns extreme is exactly the kind of preparation that prevents an emergency later. Task 2. Give flowering plants the support they need before August stress. Your flowering plants are about to face a demanding stretch, and giving them the right support now, before that stress arrives, can be the difference between a garden that keeps blooming and one that quietly shuts down. Deadheading is one of the simplest and most effective things you can do. Removing spent blooms from plants like salvia, coreopsis, and garden phlox before August helps the plant redirect its energy toward producing new flowers rather than forming seed heads. A few minutes of deadheading now can mean noticeably more color throughout the rest of the season. Light feeding can also help, but this is a place where many gardeners make mistakes. Heavy fertilizing right before a stressful period like August heat can actually push plants to produce a flush of tender new growth that struggles in the heat and becomes an easy target for pests. Instead, consider a light, balanced feeding before August arrives, giving plants a modest boost without overwhelming them. For roses in particular, this is a good time to check for any early signs of stress or disease, since a plant that enters August already fighting a problem will have a much harder time than one that enters August healthy. Bee balm and other plants prone to powdery mildew also benefit from improved air circulation, achieved through light pruning, before humidity and heat create ideal conditions for fungal issues. This is something you want to do before August arrives, because a plant that is already supported, fed appropriately, and free of lingering stress will handle the demands of late summer far better than one that is asked to recover and perform at the same time. Task 1. Prepare your watering strategy before August heat arrives. This is the single most important preparation on this list, which is exactly why I have saved it for last. Watering mistakes are the #1 reason gardens struggle in August, and the habits that work perfectly well in June often fall apart once real heat arrives. Before August heat intensifies, take a hard look at how and when you are watering. Shallow, frequent watering encourages roots to stay near the soil surface, which is exactly the wrong place for them to be once the top layer of soil starts baking in the sun. Instead, aim for deep, less frequent watering that encourages roots to grow downward into cooler, more moisture-stable soil. This single shift in habit, made before August arrives, can dramatically improve how well your plants handle heat stress. Morning watering is another habit worth establishing now. Watering in the early morning gives plants time to absorb moisture before the heat of the day arrives, and it reduces water lost to evaporation compared to watering in the middle of the afternoon. It also helps foliage dry out during the day, which lowers the risk of fungal issues on plants like bee balm and garden phlox. Container plants deserve special attention here because pots dry out far faster than garden beds, sometimes needing water daily once real heat arrives. Before August, get into the habit of checking your containers every day by feeling the top inch of soil, so you catch dryness before wilting sets in rather than after. Learn to recognize the early signs of a plant becoming stressed, such as slightly dulled leaf color or leaves that look a bit limp in the early morning, before the more obvious afternoon wilting shows up. Catching these early signs before August fully arrives gives you time to adjust your watering strategy before real damage occurs. And finally, mulching ties directly back into your watering strategy. A proper layer of mulch, applied before the peak heat arrives, can significantly reduce how often you need to water in the first place, because it slows evaporation and keeps soil temperatures more stable. It also helps to think in terms of zones rather than treating your whole garden the same way. A bed full of lavender and coneflowers, both of which prefer things on the drier side, needs a very different watering rhythm than a bed of hostas and hydrangeas, which tend to want more consistent moisture. Before August heat arrives, take a few minutes to group your watering plan by these preferences, rather than watering everything on one blanket schedule. This one adjustment, made ahead of time, often solves problems that gardeners otherwise spend all of August trying to diagnose. Get your watering strategy right before August arrives, and you will remove the single biggest source of stress your garden is about to face. The final preparation step is often ignored until it is too late, and I hope that after watching this, watering will not be one of the things you overlook. Between adjusting your watering strategy, supporting your flowering plants, protecting vulnerable ones from extreme heat, improving your soil, controlling weeds, setting up continued blooms, and starting to plan your fall garden, You now have 7 clear, practical steps you can take before August arrives. The gardeners who take these steps now are the ones who will be enjoying full, healthy blooms, while others are wondering what went wrong. I would love to know which of these 7 preparations you are starting with first, so let me know in the comments below. If this video helped you feel more prepared for the month ahead, consider subscribing for more practical gardening guidance throughout the season, and I will see you in the next one.